Hello, and welcome to Real Life, Real Beauty, a podcast about art, real life, and the story behind both. There's joy to be found, something bigger, like the feeling of not being home yet. It's all around us, and while we don't have all the answers, join us as we chase the echoes of an unseen kingdom. I'm your host, Kale Summerlin, and this is debut episode 1. Joining me in the studio is Linda Baskin. She is an emerging artist living in Dayton, Tennessee. She is a wielder of acrylic, oil, and watercolors, shaping bold colors into unusual compositions. Today's episode is titled Bodacious Art. We'll talk about Linda's story, how art can be bodacious, and much more. So, let's get going. Miss Linda, how are you doing today?
I am feeling great, thank you.
Awesome. Okay, so last summer, I remember I went to an art show at Jennings Coffee Shop in Dayton, and it was called Abstractapalooza. Am I saying that right?
You're saying it exactly right.
Awesome. You did an art show with Clay Tonic. He's a musical artist. He's actually going to be on the show soon. And also Karis Fiesel. Yes. And I just remember going to that, and I thought, I just remember like being wowed by your art. And how was that experience for you?
That was my first time like collaborating with other artists to produce something cool and different. So that part of it, like I'd done some art shows before, but never like with this theme of abstract, and like Clayton's song that he premiered that day was like his music is very eclectic and different. And Karis had dabbled a little bit into some abstract art, but that wasn't like really her thing. So it was very experimental for all of us to, like, none of us had done something like that together before. But I loved it. I had a great day that day.
That is awesome. I just remember being super impacted. And whenever I started this podcast, I was like, I need to have Miss Linda on here because she's an awesome painter and she has some really cool ideas about why she does what she does. So your art company that you made is called Bodacious Studios. Where'd you get the name for that? That's awesome. It's like poppy. Is that a word? Yeah,
poppy. Very poppy.
Very poppy.
I wanted a lot of artists will put their name like bloody blah artist or bloody blah art. And I just wanted a word that nobody maybe had heard of before. So I just on a piece of paper just listed a bunch of words that I would like to describe my art or myself or the company, like words that I would like it to be represented by. And then I started like combining some of those words in weird ways. And so Bodaza was basically a combination of bodacious and dazzling and badass.
Awesome. So yes, I decided to title this episode Bodacious Art because I saw it on your website and I thought that is wonderful. So something that you've said is that you feel like you're a late bloomer, like you started doing this art in the last 3 years. So how did you get into doing art? Like where did this come from so suddenly?
It still boggles my mind and my family's mind and people who it totally out of the blue. I was going to be a ballerina as a little girl. That was my thing. Like, I'm going to grow up and be a ballerina. And then God didn't give me the body of a ballerina. So that became clear as time went on that wasn't going to be the thing. So I ended up going into teaching, got a degree and taught. I never took an art class in high school. I like coloring books. I like arts and crafts. I like looking at art, but never in my entire life at any point did I think, I'd like to be an artist one day. So got married. We had 4 kids. We homeschooled for 20 plus years. Kids graduated and moved away. And then I thought, okay, what do I want to be when I grow up for real? Like what is the thing? What am I going to do now? And thought since my lane was like education, English, teaching, I thought I'll just find something in that lane. And I tried. I applied for different jobs that I thought would be in that lane, and like doors kept closing. I ended up getting a job at Blazing Hope Ranch, which is this ministry for survivors of sex trafficking. And then that lasted 2+ years. And then that chapter closed. And I thought, okay, for real, what am I going to be when I grow up? And I had this very short list of ended up with a very short list of possibilities. It had two things on it. It had go back to school, get my master's, and become like a counselor therapist, or become an artist. And I cannot tell you why I wrote that on that paper. I have no idea. But I wish I had something more substantial to say, like, I had all this history and whatever. No, it just totally out of the blue. And I chose artist. Like, I wanted that to be my career, and I started pursuing that.
That's kind of awesome. Something someone told me is that God puts desires on our heart. Now, of course, the heart is like wicked and deceitful above all things. But also, when we're made new creations, our desires also are changed. So it's kind of cool how God will just be like, yeah, you should check this out, and you're like, really? And so, and then you follow that.
There were like little inklings. So like if we went to DC, there's like a gazillion museums in DC that you can go to.
Yeah.
Like
I would
I would be drawn to the art. I would be drawn to the art museum over like the Natural History Museum or the Air and Space. Like I would be drawn to the art museum. So maybe there were a few little inklings in back there, but
it's always there. It's like the passion, like the core passions are kind of always under the surface.
I guess so.
I guess
it surprised me.
So like you said on your website, is that you said life is so short, people. God meant for us to enjoy him, each other, and this world, even as our lives are often filled with struggle, pain, and sadness. There's like there's this sense of joy and this sense of urgency in that statement. So what do you think about that?
I think there are two extremes. So like there are some people who want everything to be rainbows and bubbles, like they just want to pretend like life isn't really hard. Mm-hmm. And then there are some people who are so focused on how hard it is that they can't see the beauty, they can't see creativity, they can't see joy. Like it's just all horrible. So I felt like it was important to acknowledge how hard life is, like acknowledge that we're all struggling and, this earth is not in its perfect state, obviously. Like things are broken, our bodies break down, and things are really hard and people die and, there's war. I mean, you could just list all the horrible things, but that doesn't negate that there is beauty in creation, there's beauty in other people, there's beauty in art and color and the sky. I don't know. Like I was just like, I want my art to hopefully be this combination of like acknowledging both at the same time.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like it's a very real look at life, like a very holistic look. Yeah. Something you've also said, you said that my hope is that people will hear the story behind the art and make some connections for themselves. So like what do you hope that people get out of your paintings?
Okay, first of all, I would hope that like I don't know if you've ever had this experience where like you're walking through a coffee shop or a museum or something, and there's just one piece of art that you're just like double take, like, whoa. There's just something about it that draws you in, and then you have to like walk over and look closer. Like I would love for people to have that reaction when they see my art. But I get like art is so subjective. Like it's gonna hit certain people and not hit other people. Like I like bold colors. And some people hate bold colors, so they're probably not going to be double taking at my art. But I guess maybe I'm trying to capture who I can with just the first glance. And then I'm hoping that when they get closer to take that second look or that third look, that they see something something sparks inside of them. Either pure joy, like, oh my gosh, I just love, like maybe it's just an abstract with great colors and it's like a delight, and that's all it is. It's not like teaching anything or whatever. Like it's just pure wonderful experience for your eyes. And then I would hope it would spark some yearning, like a longing, that something that it reveals something they're missing. Maybe I would love for, like, I don't want to do like explicit paintings of Jesus or like that, but like I look at some art and I'm like, something in my soul is like longs to be closer to God.
Yeah. Or
I'm just like inspired by the grandeur of it, or There's something about it that makes me think bigger thoughts and deeper thoughts. So that would be another goal someday if I can get there.
Yeah, yeah, I totally get that. That's actually kind of what inspired me to make this podcast. Is for about a year now, I've been chasing this idea of like, okay, what is this yearning? Where does it come from? Because I know it can be found in like, I know it can be found in God, but like, what am I chasing? Is it beauty? Is it truth? Is it all those things? Like, and so yeah, like you said, it's those paintings that you go and you'll take the double take. In fact, that's kind of what started this for me. I was at an art gallery, but all the paintings were doing that, and I was like, wow, this is really cool.
That is cool.
Yeah, so there's this. So kind of one of the ideas I took into this podcast was that Jesus impacts all of life, and that feeling that we're not home yet. It's because he came to bring the kingdom of heaven, and that's something that grows in small ways, and it's something that's his. But we can reflect that here, so we have the hope of heaven. Like, we're like, if we're Christians, if we're saved, we're gonna go to heaven. But also like what do we do? Like, what do we do in the meantime? How do we not just fight sin, but promote joy, promote beauty? Do you like? And I guess one way I've seen it is like through art. So what do you think about that? How are you doing that?
So I've wondered about this kingdom idea. Like I've heard I grew up in a Christian family, like I've heard all my life about the kingdom of God, and it's all in the Bible. But I don't know that I ever really understood. Like I've heard different people describe it in different ways, but like I think, like I started thinking of like an actual kingdom with a king. Like there was this country, it had a king and a queen, and that God is the king, and we're like his kids, so we're like princesses and princes of the kingdom, but we live in this. It's a spiritual, like it's an unseen kingdom, right? It's spiritual, but like we represent the king, but we have this freedom to like go do. We have the freedom to go do things in the world, choose to do things in the world but we're representing the king.
Yeah.
Like we are his representatives out in the world, and like he's got the plan, he's got the wisdom, he's got the power and all that. And we just have this amazing opportunity or opportunities over and over to represent him and whatever that looks like. So like with this art, like I could just be painting a painting, and I'm like, or just think of anything, like cooking a meal or driving a friend to an appointment. Like it's hard to think that all of those kind of mundane things might be furthering a kingdom somehow. But I think that if we're walking with God to the appointment, taking the friend to the appointment, we're with God, like we're mindful that he is there and he's helping us, and we've like committed to him and surrendered our lives to him, then no matter what we choose to do, I mean, obviously not sinning, like obviously not going against him directly, but like whatever it is, if we're walking with him, we are going to be representing him. It's going to come out in what we say, in how we move, whatever, and it's going to further his kingdom. Like it's going to come out in the art or in the conversation in the car on the way, or it's just going to come out. Like, I don't know that it's got to be super complicated. Maybe.
Yeah, it really doesn't. In trying to, so I spent so long trying to figure out the questions for this podcast. I was like, okay, I can write all these super deep questions about like, why do you do your art? How has Jesus impacted you? And I range from complicated questions to simple questions, and I realized like kind of what you just said, like it's really more of a simple thing, and that's why I'm so glad to hear from you, and to hear your take. That it's in the mundane things that we're like the everyday, the real life things that we're just living out, that we're walking in the light.
So there is a question that you sent you sent
Yes.
some possible questions. So there's one that I hope we can get to.
Okay.
If there's time. And that was like the resistance, like what roadblocks, like what's been hard about the journey.
So this idea of resistance, I can talk about this later, but it's the idea that like, that trying to spread this goodness, trying to spread this beauty, that can be that like there's there's always forces working against it. So like, how has that been for you? How do you fight against this resistance? How do you like press on?
I listed a bunch of things.
Okay.
Just for my own, like, okay, what have been the roadblocks? What is the resistance? And it's perfectionism, and I mean, I listed several things that plague me regularly. But I think the biggest one is fear, and it's kind of related to the question or the thing you were just saying. Is I think fear, like the best thing I can do is constantly give over these fears and anxieties to God, and ask Him to build faith and trust Him. Like, trust that He's got me. He's gonna let me know. Like, if I'm like veering, He's gonna let me know. Because I just get so wrapped up in like, I'm gonna mess up, I'm gonna get it wrong. And I've even thought like this whole art career, that was a mistake. You were just supposed to make it a hobby. It was never supposed to be a career. Like, you've overstepped your boundaries, and you need to just step back. But then there would just be these confirmations along the way, like, no, keep going. Like, you're good. Like, I've got you, and I'm like, God is big enough and strong enough to make sure I hear what He's saying, and I can't mess up that bad.
That's awesome. That is so cool to hear. Yeah. Well, I think that about wraps it up for today. Linda, you asked if I had a special question for you, and I had not thought of like a special question to ask my guests. So I'm just gonna ask you the one that you had suggested.
Okay.
So if there's, and we're gonna keep this brief because we got to wrap this up. So, what is something that you want to do before you die? Like one thing.
I really want to jump out of a plane.
Okay, me too. I really want to do that. Like, I wouldn't.
Maybe
jump
we could do that
out.
together.
Yeah, like someone would have to shove me out, but I would enjoy it. It would be great. Just flying.
Free fall.
Free fall. Yeah.
Yes.
There you go.
Someday.
One day. Well, thank you so much for being here, Linda. Listeners, please check out her stuff. I will post links to her website and her social media on my social media. Which, speaking of, be sure to follow me. Look up Kale Summerlin. And if you really learn from this podcast, be sure to share it with your friends, follow the podcast. Also, Spotify listeners, I've created a playlist that goes along with this podcast. Just search Real Life, Real Beauty playlist. It's got some songs that I thought were really cool about creating and art. And there's going to be, coming up soon, there'll be some songs from some songwriters I'm going to interview. So until later, be inspired. Support artists you know, make art yourself, and just integrate some rest from the love of Christ into your routine. With that, seek out beauty in real life.